The veteran's dog tags caught the studio lights as he gripped them during Russell Crowe's interview about portraying warriors and broken men. Ellen was discussing the actor's latest role as a PTSD-afflicted soldier when she noticed the man in the third row silently weeping while staring at a folded American flag in his lap. What happened next would prove that some battles don't end when the war is over, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage is admitting you need help to fight the enemy that lives inside your own mind. It was a compelling Tuesday afternoon at the Ellen DeGeneres show, and the studio hummed with anticipation. 400 audience members had gathered to see one of cinema's most intense and authentic actors discuss his craft. Ellen, striking in a deep navy blazer with subtle gold trim, was thoroughly enjoying her conversation with Russell Crowe, who sat with characteristic gravitas in the guest chair, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his presence commanding the room with that blend of intelligence and raw honesty that had made him one of the most respected actors of his generation. "Russell," Ellen said, leaning forward with genuine fascination, "you've played so many complex characters dealing with internal battles, warriors, fighters, men struggling with their demons. What draws you to those roles?" Russell's eyes took on that thoughtful intensity that made his performances so compelling. "Ellen, I think there's something profound about exploring what happens to the human spirit when it's been tested beyond its limits. Whether it's a gladiator fighting for survival or a soldier coming home from war, these are people who've seen things that change them forever. The real battle often begins when the external fight is over." The audience listened with the kind of respectful attention that Russell's sincerity commanded. This wasn't typical celebrity promotion. This was a conversation about the human condition. "And your latest film," Ellen continued, "you play a veteran struggling with PTSD. That must have required incredible research and sensitivity." "It did," Russell nodded earnestly. "I spent months with veterans, listening to their stories, trying to understand what it's like to come home from war, but never really leave the battlefield behind. These men and women, they've given everything for their country. But when they come home struggling with trauma, too often they're told to just move on, get over it, be grateful they're alive." That's when Ellen noticed him. In the third row, slightly to the right, sat a man who appeared to be in his early 30s. He had close-cropped brown hair and wore a simple gray hoodie over jeans. Around his neck hung military dog tags that he kept touching with trembling fingers. His name was Marcus Rodriguez, though Ellen didn't know it yet. What caught Ellen's attention was the way Marcus was staring at Russell, while tears streamed silently down his face. And in his lap, he clutched a carefully folded American flag, the kind presented to families at military funerals. Marcus's breathing had become labored, and Ellen could see him rocking slightly in his seat, lost in whatever memories Russell's words had triggered. Ellen's instincts, honed through 20 years of reading her audiences, told her this wasn't the emotional response of someone moved by a performance. This was recognition, trauma, and immediate need. "Russell," Ellen said gently, "hold that thought about coming home from war. I think someone in our audience is living exactly what you're describing." Russell followed Ellen's gaze toward Marcus, his expression immediately shifting from entertainer to deeply concerned human being as he recognized the signs of someone in distress. Ellen stood up from her chair and took several steps toward the audience. "Sir, in the third row with the flag, are you okay?" Marcus looked up, startled by the sudden attention of 400 people and multiple cameras. He clutched the folded flag tighter and tried to wipe his tears, embarrassed by his emotional display. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion and carrying a slight Texas accent. "I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just what he said about never leaving the battlefield behind." Ellen didn't hesitate. She walked down the steps that separated the stage from the audience, something she did only when every instinct told her someone needed immediate attention. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ellen asked, now standing directly in front of Marcus's row. "Marcus Rodriguez, Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, United States Army." Ellen knelt down in the aisle beside Marcus's row, her navy blazer spreading around her. The studio cameras adjusted to capture both of them, but Ellen's focus was entirely on Marcus. "Marcus, how long have you been home?" Marcus looked down at the flag in his lap, then back up at Ellen with such raw pain that it made everyone in the studio understand they were witnessing something profound. 18 months, but like he said, I never really left. Not in my head. From the stage, Russell Crowe leaned forward in his chair, his actor's training forgotten, as he focused entirely on Marcus's words, with the intensity of someone who had spent months researching exactly this situation. Ellen took Marcus's hands gently, feeling them shake. "Marcus, tell me about that flag you're holding." Marcus's voice cracked as he spoke. "This is from my best friend's funeral, Staff Sergeant Tommy Chen. We served 3 tours together in Afghanistan. He saved my life more times than I can count." Marcus's breathing became more labored. "The IED that got him, I was supposed to be in that vehicle. I stayed back because I had food poisoning. He died, and I lived, and I can't understand why." The studio fell into that profound silence that happens when hundreds of people confront survivors' guilt and the invisible wounds of war. Russell Crowe, without being asked, stood up from his chair and walked to the edge of the stage. "Marcus, may I come down there and talk to you?" Marcus nodded, fresh tears streaming down his face. Russell descended the stage steps with the careful respect of someone who understood he was approaching sacred ground. He moved to kneel beside Ellen, creating an intimate circle of 3 people connected by this moment of raw honesty about war's lasting damage. "Marcus?" Russell said, his voice carrying that warmth and authority that had made him a compelling leading man. "What you're experiencing, that guilt, that feeling like you should have been the one who died, that's not rational. That's trauma talking." Marcus looked at Russell with surprise. "But I should have been there. Tommy had kids, a wife. I've got nobody. It should have been me." "Listen to me," Russell continued with intensity. "I've talked to dozens of veterans who survived when their brothers didn't. Every single one of them said exactly what you just said. But survival isn't about who deserves it more. It's about chance and circumstance and sometimes just luck." Ellen stood up slowly, her heart breaking for this young man carrying impossible weight. "Marcus," Ellen said, "when was the last time you slept through the night?" "I can't remember," Marcus admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there. I hear the explosion. I see Tommy's face. I've been drinking more, isolating. My family doesn't understand why I can't just be grateful I'm alive." Russell reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his personal phone. "Marcus, I want to give you the contact information for a veterans support center in Texas. They have programs specifically for combat PTSD and survivors' guilt. But more than that, I want you to know that what you're feeling doesn't make you weak." Ellen began removing her navy blazer, the one that had become her signature for this season. "Marcus," Ellen said, "this blazer has been with me through some of my most important interviews. But today it's witnessing something more important than any celebrity story. It's witnessing a warrior who's still fighting, just on a different battlefield." She placed the blazer around Marcus's shoulders. "I want you to keep this. And when you're having those dark moments, when the guilt feels overwhelming, I want you to remember that Tommy saved your life for a reason. Maybe that reason is helping other veterans who are struggling like you are." Russell stood up and addressed the cameras directly. "If there are veterans watching this who are struggling with PTSD, with survivor's guilt, with the feeling that nobody understands what you've been through, please know that you're not alone. Please know that getting help isn't giving up. It's continuing the fight." But the moment that brought the entire studio to tears came when Ellen asked Marcus what he thought Tommy would want him to know. Marcus clutched the flag tighter, closed his eyes for a moment, then looked up with something that resembled peace for the first time since he'd started talking. Tommy would want me to stop trying to die with him and start trying to live for him, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. He would want me to get help. He would want me to stop drinking. He would want me to remember that he saved me because he thought my life was worth saving. The audience erupted in applause, but it wasn't celebrity applause. It was the deep, emotional recognition of someone finding their way back from the edge. Russell knelt back down beside Marcus. And Marcus, I want you to know that every day you choose to keep fighting this battle, you're honoring Tommy's sacrifice. Every day you choose to get help, to heal, to live, you're proving he was right to save you. 6 months later, Marcus Rodriguez appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show again, but this time he wasn't alone. He had completed an intensive PTSD treatment program, had been sober for 4 months, and had started a support group for combat veterans in his hometown. Russell Crowe, who had stayed in regular contact with Marcus, appeared via video to celebrate his progress and announced that his latest film would donate a portion of its proceeds to veterans' mental health programs. The segment sparked a national conversation about the invisible wounds of war and the need for better support systems for returning veterans. Marcus became an advocate for veteran mental health, speaking at VA hospitals about the importance of seeking treatment and the reality that healing is possible. Ellen learned that day that her job wasn't to interview famous people about their latest projects. Her job was to create moments where hidden pain could be acknowledged, where shame could be transformed into hope, and where warriors could learn that asking for help is another form of courage. Russell Crowe learned that the most important performances happen not on movie sets, but in moments when his research into complex characters helps him recognize real pain and offer real support to someone fighting battles that don't make headlines. And Marcus Rodriguez learned that sometimes the hardest enemy to defeat is the one that lives inside your own mind, but that with help, with community, and with the determination to live for those who can't, even that battle can be won. Because the most powerful stories aren't about fictional warriors on movie screens. They're about real warriors coming home from real battles, learning to fight new enemies that wear the faces of guilt and trauma and shame, and discovering that victory sometimes looks like simply choosing to live another day.